RetroDaze.
Okay, it's late August or early September. Outside, the sun still shines just as hot and bright as it did on the 4th of July, but there's a sinking feeling in your gut. It may still feel like summer. Heck, technically it is still summer, but for you, school starts on Monday, and that's as good as the death of vacation.
Still, you've also learned that when things end, other things begin. And even though this particular beginning is the onset of the school year, it also means back-to-school shopping is in full swing. New clothes and school supplies never sound like much fun at first, but there are always those few popular items that garner your interest. What follows is a list of the most memorable back-to-school items that were probably in your backpack in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. Our first pick this week spans all 3 decades and is still a popular item for school-aged kids looking to store their class notes like their parents did. The Trapper Keeper launched to huge success in 1978 after what the inventor E. Bryant Crutchfield called the most scientific and pragmatically planned product ever in that industry. And the market research paid off, with the parent company Mead selling over $100 million of the folders and notebooks a year. The official national rollout didn't happen until the summer of '81, paired with a primetime advertising campaign on television.
So, I close the trapper, the papers stay trapped in.
Although a huge part of the success was the innovative layout of the folders, known as trappers, and binder, known as the Trapper Keeper, the true draw for many kids was the design choices. During that first launch, they offered folders in red, blue, and green, and the Trapper Keeper came in the same styles. Though these choices paled in comparison to what Mead would eventually offer, Crutchfield tells us, "I saw kids fight over designs in retail." Mead eventually began offering new designs for each school year, with pop culture characters like Garfield and Sonic the Hedgehog licensed for use, and Lisa Frank even made a deal to have some of her iconic imagery appear on Trapper Keepers. Though the product's popularity declined in the mid-90s, the Trapper Keeper has never gone away, and in recent years has even made something of a comeback with retro-style designs like the kind they had in the 80s and 90s. Even though we mentioned Lisa Frank in the last segment, it'd be a mistake not to focus on her colorful and psychedelic designs, as they were pervasive throughout the 80s and 90s. According to Frank, in an interview she did for a short video called The World of Lisa Frank, the design elements that encompass the world of Lisa Frank would, first and foremost, probably be rainbows,
and then hearts, music notes, teddy bears, unicorns, stars, color, fantasy, jewels, glints, everything that makes a kid happy, smile.
These designs were on the Trapper Keeper, sticker sets, pencils, notepads, and so much more of what young girls of the 80s and 90s would bring into the classroom. In fact, her art was so popular, nearly all the back-to-school products we talk about today could very well have a Lisa Frank variant. Speaking of products with Lisa Frank designs emblazoned on them, another staple of the new school year was lunchboxes. Now, of course, long before Lisa Frank designs were a thing, there were the metal lunch pails of the 1880s that working men who couldn't afford a hot lunch would use to carry their food. Commercially made lunchboxes first appeared in 1902, usually depicting children playing. 1935 saw the first use of a popularized cartoon character, Mickey Mouse, on the lunchbox, and the 1950s saw an explosion of pop culture designs as television shows ruled the airwaves. As reported by Smithsonian Magazine, executives at a Nashville company called Aladdin realized they could sell more of their relatively indestructible lunchboxes if they decorated them with the fleeting icons of popular culture. Even if that Hopalong Cassidy lunchbox was barely scratched, the kid whose newest fancy was the Lone Ranger would want to trade in his pail for the latest model. Metal lunchboxes remained the popular choice through the 70s, with their plastic counterparts only overtaking them in the 80s. But even if the material changed, the outrageous designs and pop culture subject matter remained. If there was a popular television show or cartoon, there was almost certainly a lunchbox depicting those characters with matching thermoses filled to the brim with a cold drink or hot soup. We'd list all the iconic lunchboxes that have ever been made, but this is only a 10-minute show. So, we're putting the onus on the producer to plaster the screen with as many images as he can muster before time runs out. Go, Tony! Go! 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 And time's up. Clearly, writing utensils and accessories such as pencil boxes and erasers were imperative. Every back-to-school supply list featured the classic number 2 pencil, but if teachers actually wanted us to use those pencils, they'd better dang well have some kind of splashy design or unique topper. It goes without saying at this point that there were Lisa Frank pencils, but there were plenty of other favorites to go around, like music notes, dinosaurs, holiday designs, and so on. So many more, in fact, that... Oh, Mr. Producer, sir, would you mind? Yes, dance for me, producer puppet. Show me the pencils. Show me all of the pencils. Oh. But what were these rad pencils without super cool toppers? It's difficult to pin down exactly when pencil toppers were invented, who invented them, and when they became popular, but it seems they go back to at least the 1920s when companies would use them for advertising. These were often metal with a round section for the company name. By the 1950s, like with lunchboxes, pop culture influenced the types of pencil toppers being made with things like Howdy Doody, King Kong, Universal Monsters, Peanuts, and more. By the 70s, 80s, and 90s, pencil toppers were even more varied in style. There were crazy hair pencil toppers, pumpkins, trolls, animals, vehicles, and snowmen. There was Garfield, Gumby, Mickey Mouse, Winnie the Pooh, Big Bird, and Santa Claus. There was again? Blah, 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 Lisa Frank, blah, blah, blah. Sheesh, with this Lisa Frank already. The point is, if you had an interest in it, there was probably a pencil and/or pencil topper for you. The same can be said about pencil cases. Like lunchboxes, here was yet another chance for you to show the world, or, well, the school anyway, what you loved. Race cars, the Smurfs, unicorns, yes, and yes. And yes to whatever else you were thinking, especially the super cool transforming robot pencil box, which is clearly the best one. Yet another way to advertise your personal interests was a backpack. The type of backpack you chose often differed greatly from decade to decade and school grade to school grade. If you were in elementary school in the 90s, for instance, there'd be absolutely nothing wrong with sporting a radical Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or Hello Kitty backpack. But if you were in high school, you probably had a JanSport hanging from one shoulder with some choice band patches sewn on. The JanSport backpack was created by Skip Yowell in 1967 as a hiking backpack and named after his wife, Janice. Soon after, the bags were sold at universities and became hugely popular. For a time, those little strings that hung from JanSport zippers were something of a status symbol too, with kids displaying them as proudly as Olympic medals. Fun fact, JanSport bags are covered by a lifetime warranty against manufacturing defects. So if you still have your old bag kicking around, depending on the issue, it might be eligible. Diverging from our previous picks, calculators weren't exactly the best way to display your individualism, but they were often required for classes. In the 70s, you might have had a little professor calculator to help you learn simple arithmetic. The device presented math problems to be solved by typing in the answer. You had 3 tries to get it correct, and after 10 questions were completed, you'd get a score. The fun visual of a calculator with a face was a nice touch too. In high school, and sometimes not until college, you would likely have had to purchase a graphing calculator and no doubt scoffed at what would have seemed like an insane amount of money, often $80 to $130 or more, for something you really didn't even want. Not unlike calculators, there were a number of other possible additions to your yearly supply run that probably failed to rouse any real interest in your young mind. Things like the metal compass, wooden ruler, and the composition notebook. There wasn't much you could do with these supplies except maybe plaster the notebook with stickers and draw all over the wooden ruler. Still, each of these items were, at some point, necessities for your adventures in learning and imbued with a particular nostalgic sheen when the light of a late summer sun hits them just right.
It's clear that no matter how you felt about going back to school when you were young, as an adult, the memories are some of our most impactful. There was something special about the waning daylight and cooling weather, something comforting about the sudden appearance of back-to-school supplies in stores, as if to say, yes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So tell me, what must-have items were stuffed in your backpack as the first bell rang? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you enjoy our content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even activating that ubiquitous little notification bell. It really does make a huge difference. Let's meet again next week to celebrate yesteryear right here on RetroDaze.
clicky clacky.